what happened for you back in 2018 and 2019, because there were these major shifts occurring, and we're in a similar time period right now of these major shifts occurring. What are these themes that you're revisiting about your self-worth, your values, your money, your material possessions, now that Uranus is back in Taurus for a little bit, giving us a chance to reevaluate its lesson? Where do you have Taurus in your chart? Let me know in the comments. Hi, welcome back to the channel. I am so excited to talk about Uranus in this video because for the past 7 years Uranus has been in Taurus, and it's a pretty big deal when it moves signs because Uranus rules the 7-year cycles that we go through, and none of us alive today are going to see, or most of us I should say, are not going to see Uranus back in Taurus because Uranus takes 84 years to move through all 12 zodiac signs. So this is a pretty significant event that we're living through and that we're wrapping up right now. I've gotten a lot of questions about Uranus back in Taurus and what it means, and it really, to sum it up, is a closure of the 7-year cycle you've been in the area of life you have Taurus in your chart. So I'm gonna go through, I have on my iPad here the exact dates of Uranus and Taurus. Because Uranus moves so slowly, it tends to take time to transition into new signs because of the retrograde cycle. Similar with Pluto, just like how we had Pluto go back into Capricorn a couple times before it fully is now in Aquarius. Most outer planets go through that same sort of cycle. Saturn, Neptune, we're experiencing this with those planets, as well as they're back in Pisces now and are making their way into Aries. And so with Uranus, we experience that too. And as I've talked about in all my videos and all my courses, retrogrades are not bad. Retrogrades are just times to reassess and reflect on how that planet's lesson, because every planet has a certain lesson to teach you in the sign that it's in. That's the energy of the lesson, and the house that it's in your birth chart is the area of your physical life it is showing up. So if you're a Libra rising and something is moving through, transiting your first house, that is, your first house is you. So it's affecting you, and that's planet's lessons, and that energy of Libra are going to be showing up in you, your physical appearance, your body, your identity, your sense of self, all things having to do with you, right? So that's a little sneak peek of what I teach in my courses and how to understand and read your birth chart on your own with all of those components of it. That's really just, you know, in general what everything represents is planets are lessons, the signs are the energy, and the houses are the area of your physical life it's showing up for you. Now when we're talking about the planet Uranus, the lesson of Uranus is change, innovation, and that can be a little bit chaotic because change is chaotic and change is not stable. Whenever we make a major change in our lives, it requires a big transition. It requires some chaos to that in order to have ultimately a better life. So whenever we're talking about the transits of Uranus to your birth chart, we're looking at the 7-year cycles of change that you're experiencing on a kind of zoomed out general level, and that change can take time for you to learn those lessons. So this is why I wrote down on my trusty iPad all of the dates of when Uranus has been in Taurus, so you can kind of reflect on what was going on in your life based on where you have Taurus in your chart. For me, it's the 8th house, so this has shown up in a multitude of ways, mostly with my investments, with my resources, like what I'm doing with money, as well as how I'm making it, paying off debts, things like that has been a really big focus for me. Just kind of clean up with my resources, with money, and in doing it in a way that's like balanced and fair, and that feels good for me moving forward. I was really someone who wasn't super responsible with money. I was never like taught really how to handle it. So the 7-year cycle of Uranus through my 8th house in Taurus for me has been about like kind of claiming some responsibility there and really setting intentions and creating from an intentional place like what I want in that area of my life, what I want to invest in, what I want to do with, and how I want to handle debt and things like that. And Taurus rules money in general. It also rules our values and our self-worth and our material possessions. So that has been a major focus in general for all of us over the last 7 years, like really transforming our relationship with money, with material possessions, with our self-worth and our values, and how our self-worth and values play into those physical components of this energy. So without further ado, the dates of Uranus going into Taurus. The first time that Uranus went into Taurus was May 15th of 2018, which I've talked about this in another video that I did a few years ago. Uranus in Aries, for me, it was moving through my 7th house, and I was like chronically in a lot of relationships. Because it was in my 7th house, there's a lot of like kind of tumultuousness and change within my relationships. I would date someone for a year or so and then hop into another relationship where I would date that person for a year or so, and that's kind of how that showed up for me. And the minute Uranus started to shift into Taurus was when I really started to end that cycle and change what I was focused on. So the first time Uranus went into Taurus was May 15th of 2018. What was going on for you then? For me, I was really starting to come to terms with a lot of financial stuff that had been occurring for me at the time. Makes sense. Uranus started to move into my 8th house. Then we had Uranus go back into Aries on November 7th of 2018. What got a revisitation of that, the start of that energy from May until November. And then Uranus moved back into Taurus a final time in March 7th of 2019. So what was kind of going on in your life from May of 2018 to March of 2019? Because this was when the energy was starting to shift and these things were starting to become apparent of like what needs to change, maybe in a kind of chaotic way. I know for me, like a relationship I was in at the time was very much falling apart and starting to fall apart by the beginning of 2019. And it fully fell apart by the summer of 2019. Kind of crazy to look back on all of this stuff for me, because it's like we can explain so many things that happen in our lives with astrology, and this is why I teach it in my courses, and I help you to understand it and support you in the learning of the systems in my membership, because it is so helpful and insightful to be able to have this literal cheat code to your life and be like, what was going on for me then? Or like, what is going on for me now? And you can literally see and kind of understand and explain it by looking at what's going on in your chart with the current transits, because the current transits are like, okay, what's going on for you right now, or what happened for you. For me, like what happened for y'all back in 2018 and 2019, because there were these major shifts occurring, and we're in a similar time period right now of these major shifts occurring. On that same note, we had Uranus first move into Gemini July 8th of this year. And now we are in another 7-year kind of cycle transition. So as Uranus is back in Taurus right now, we're wrapping up that 7-year cycle that began back in 2018-2019. So Uranus went back into Taurus on November 8th of this year, and it is not going to go back into Gemini until the end of April, which is my birthday. Yay, so it's going to be in my solar return chart for the year ahead. But anyway, so we have Uranus in Taurus from now until the end of April of 2026. So what are these themes that you're revisiting about your self-worth, your values, your money, and your material possessions now that Uranus is back in Taurus for a little bit, giving us a chance to reevaluate its lesson and how it's shown up for us, and helping us to realize maybe things about our lives we want to innovate or we want to change as it relates to like our stability, especially when it comes to what we have and how our values have changed, and maybe we need to line up what we have and how we're like embodied in our individual lives to line up with what about us has changed, right? Because Chiron has been in Aries. It's funny, Chiron went into Aries around the same time that Uranus went into Taurus, and so Chiron in Aries is also a 7-year cycle, and that has been healing a lot of wounds around our sense of self and our identity. So our literal sense of self and identity and values have all been changing since that time, and so now that we are stepping into the new, what needs needs further kind of like recalibration in our lives in order to have what we are stepping into, or what we, you know, what has changed about us that we're realizing we want to change about our external, and making those changes so that we learn the lessons of Uranus and Taurus. And that is going to be going on until, like I said, the end of April of next year. Pretty unique about this transit right now too is that we have a new moon in Scorpio coming up at the time that I'm filming this, and it is going to be opposite Uranus, and Mercury retrograde is going to be opposite Uranus as well. So this is going to be a major theme for the next few weeks, especially of like, what do you need to change, what do you need to transform, what new seeds are you planting to have maybe a different or new relationship with money or your material possessions, or how your sense of stability in your life, and what kind of things you want to have around you versus what you don't. Maybe what has been unnecessary. I feel like a lot of us are gonna really be coming at things with a mindset of minimalism and what really needs to let go of. Where can we trim or skim the fat, so to speak, of things that we don't really want, or realizing we don't really want or need in our lives anymore. So that to me is the overall energy of Uranus back into Taurus for this final time. It is a big closing out of a chapter of change and innovation that we began back in 2018-2019. Uranus will go direct in Taurus on February 3rd, and then this energy will become externalized. Remember that retrogrades are really just periods to take the energy inward, to reflect and refine and reassess, and then once it goes direct, we take that energy and its lesson externally into our outward world. And if you want to learn more about how to read and apply the transits to your astrology and understand your astrology, come take my Become an Astrologer course. Or if you already know the basics, come take my intermediate astrology course. I teach you a lot more deeper concepts in there, in my intermediate level 2 astrology course. So excited to see you inside. Let's get into the rising sign horoscopes for this transit. There's more to your chart than just one isolated transit, an area of your chart. This will give you a little insight on what to reflect, what area of life to reflect on, and how this change has been showing up for you since 2018-2019, and what will be getting a revisitation with this retrograde. So Aries Rising, what has been changing about your money, about your material possessions? What has been changing about your sense of stability over the last 7 years? And where are you making necessary cleanups right now to further solidify those changes that you're realizing you want to make? Taurus Rising, what has been changing about your identity, your sense of self, maybe your appearance as well? And those changes are really solidifying right now for you, maybe rooted in a new version of you, a new version of your self-worth, worthiness of you, of yourself, your value, and how you present that to the world. Gemini Rising, what has been changing about your subconscious? What has been changing about your relationship with spiritual practices that help you to heal, that help you to ground and have a sense of stability in your life? What hidden themes that have maybe from your childhood or from your conditioning have you been uncovering over these last 7 years? And what about that is solidifying for you, especially as it relates to money, material possessions? Cancer Rising, what has been changing about your friendships, your community, your network over the last 7 years? Maybe even your long-term visions, your long-term goals for yourself that you have as well. What has changed about that, and where are you further solidifying those changes right now? Leo Rising, what has been changing about your career over the last 7 years, or how you want to be known to the world, your legacy, your public reputation, your public image? What has been changing about that for you, and how are you further refining and recalibrating things in your life to match the vision that has changed for you when it comes to what you want to be known for? Virgo Rising, what about your perspective of life has been changing over the last 7 years? What about maybe your programming, your conditioning, your belief systems, maybe even spiritual practices and your relationship with spirituality has been changing over the last 7 years? And how are you solidifying in right now new perspectives and new philosophies of life that really align with what about your sense of worthiness and your values have changed? Libra Rising. What have you realized you want to change about your money, about where it's going, about how you're spending it, how you're using it, how you're investing it? What are you realizing about your external resources has changed for you, and what changes about that are you solidifying right now to maybe pay off debt so you can invest, or pay off debt so you can have more space? Or what are you realizing about that needs to change right now? Scorpio Rising, what about your relationships is changing? What about who you have around you is changing? Not only romantic relationships or partnership or marriage, but everyone that you have around you. What about that is changing? And how can you really bring in and focus on aligning with people who actually match your values and how they've changed over the last 7 years? Sagittarius Rising, what about your work and your day-to-day routine, and maybe how you take care of your physical body has gone through a lot of change over the last 7 years, and how are you solidifying in these new changes right now that really line up with how you want to take care of yourself on a daily basis and maybe have a better work-life balance? Capricorn Rising, what about romance or dating or creative pursuits is changing for you, and what are you solidifying in right now to maybe take action on some creative project that you have maybe been sitting on or keep making changes to, that you want to actually bring into the physical during this time, and trust that the changes you've already made are good enough. Aquarius Rising, what about your sense of home? Your foundations are changing and have been changing over the last 7 years, and how are you solidifying those in right now? What has changed about your family or your home life, and what else do you want to kind of recalibrate and make refinements to in order to have more of what you've wanted for your sense of home and family moving forward? Pisces Rising, what has been changing about how you communicate yourself from a place of worthiness and value? What has been changing about how you share ideas and information, and also where you go on a daily basis and who you talk to on a daily basis? Now is the time to really solidify in those changes that you're making to that area of your life. How's this showing up for you? Where do you have Taurus in your chart? Let me know in the comments. We can chat about it below, or come join my membership if you want to share your chart in a private and intimate space and ask me questions about your chart and get support. My membership is the place to do it. Thanks for watching. Embrace the change that you are feeling called to make right now, because it is for your highest good. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.